Hey everyone, it's Jess. This case has three defendants, so it is going to be in multiple parts to break it up. It is a unaliving case with three defendants. I did some research, and one of the defendants was actually arrested and extradited from Georgia. This case happened, I want to say it was in June, and it happened on Facebook Live. Obviously, I'm not going to be trying to get any of that footage. This case does have three defendants, Bonner, Walker, and Pitts. So it's the state of Michigan v. Bonner, Walker, and Pitts. It is a tough case. I have a feeling it's going to end up being demonetized, even with me editing out all of the words that would get flagged. So if you would like to further support my channel, down in the description is the link for memberships for my channel, which would give you actually exclusive content, extra fun stuff, and per usual is the link for Luna's BarkBox habit if you'd like to support that. For my disclaimers, I am not an attorney. I am not making any legal conclusions, nor am I offering any advice. All comments are my opinion, and all persons are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Well, let's get started.
Court does call the cases of the People's State of Michigan versus Sharif Bonner in two matters, that being case 22 FB 1045 and 1044, and the People's State of Michigan versus Tyree Pitts, that being case number 22 FB 1047. Counsel, state your appearances, please.
Lieutenant for the people. Andrew Childers appearing on behalf of the people. Good morning, I'm Robert J. Kilwell on behalf of Tyree Pitts. Tyree Station for the record. Good morning, I'm Tyree Pitts.
Good morning.
David I. Goldstein appearing on behalf of Sharif Bonner. He's seated to my right.
All right, very good. All right. Date time set for preliminary examination. We ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, just as a formality, sequester witnesses, anybody that's, I believe the two detectives are fine, but anybody else that's going to testify.
All right.
Yes.
Any response?
Your Honor, we have no objection to the sequestration order. If we could just have
Robert, you can step up. Trask will be first.
Trask will be first.
All right.
This, examination.
Your Honor, let me join with Mr. Kilwell. The people approached us prior to starting the examination. We got the objections to two OICs remaining in the court, and I have no objection.
All right. No objection on behalf of your client. All right.
And Your Honor, just for the record purposes, in regard to the ME report, for the autopsy report, the parties have stipulated no need to have a medical examiner testify in regard to the autopsy report.
That's true, Your Honor. For purpose of the exam, we have no question. We have no objections.
For exam purposes only, Your Honor, we have no objection.
All right. So the OICs may remain in the courtroom. There's a stipulation to the report of the medical examiner. All right.
Would it make sense if I question the witness from up there?
That would be fine. Call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. You will call Deputy Trask to the stand.
Sir, please come forward to be sworn.
You raise your right hand. Solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
State your first and last name and spell it for the record.
It's Deputy Richard Traskos, RICHARD, last of TRSKOS.
All right, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, as a preliminary matter, he brought a piece of, looks like a piece of paper up there, and is that one of the police reports, just so defense counsel knows? Yes, sir.
It is.
What number is that, sir?
That would be report number 22-50192.
All right. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, how are you currently employed?
I'm employed as a road patrol deputy by the Washington County Sheriff's Office
And how long have you worked with the Sheriff's Office?
since 2015.
Thank you. Were you working in that capacity back on June the 28th of this year, 2022?
Yes, sir.
And did you receive a dispatch to an address on Nash in Ypsilanti Township?
Yes.
What was the nature of that dispatch?
The nature of the dispatch showed up shots fired with the person struck.
Okay. And what did you do after receiving that dispatch?
I responded to the urgent from my location to the address. When I arrived there, I retrieved my medical kit, approached the address. I found one individual talking on her cell phone in the backyard, and Mr. Smith lying on the ground.
And that was the person who was eventually identified as a Terrell Smith.
Yes, I knew Terrell Smith from previous contacts.
Okay. And where this address, Nash, Nash. Could you describe that address?
It's a single-story ranch. It is on the west side of the road. The driveway was on the north side of the residence.
And this is in the West Willow neighborhood?
Correct.
Okay. When you approach, and what time of day was it that you arrived at that address?
Around 11.
Okay, so it's daylight out.
Correct.
You approached that residence, you said you observed the victim, Terrell Smith. Where was he in relation to that residence?
He was in the backyard towards the southeast corner of the backyard.
Okay. And how did you find him? Did you just walk around, or did someone point you in the direction?
Essentially, I went to where I heard you yelling.
Okay.
That was the backyard.
You had said that there was an individual on their cell phone at the time.
Correct.
Was that person in near Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay. What, if anything, did you do with respect to Mr. Smith?
When I made contact with him, I started to assess his well-being. He was not responding. His eyes were open. He was breathing. I noticed near his, essentially near his pelvis, his clothes were blood stained. Okay, blood set.
And what did you do?
At that point, I started to assess his injuries. The first one, I cut off his clothing. First wound I saw was on the right side of his pelvis. It appeared to be an arterial bleed. I also observed another wound to his right buttocks. Deputy Phillips arrived on scene. I had applied pressure to his pelvis. And then I located another wound in his chest, looking to the left side.
So you and Deputy Phillips, were you the first two deputies to arrive on scene?
Yes.
You're rendering first aid to Mr. Smith. What else is going on at that time?
At that time, I was concentrating on rendering aid.
Okay. Are you requesting additional units, or is that being handled by someone else? What's happening as far as ambulance, other deputies, so on and so forth?
I was reporting injuries over the radio to advise HVA while they were en route. Everyone was already en route because when the call was dispatched, it was coming out.
Okay.
So every available unit was already en route.
What was that?
Every available unit was already en route.
Got it. Thank you. And about how long did it take for Huron Valley ambulance to arrive at the scene?
I don't recall.
Okay. Minutes?
Minutes, yeah.
Didn't take a half hour.
No.
And at some point, did you turn over the care of Mr. Smith to HVA personnel?
First, I turned over the care of Mr. Smith to Ipsy Township Fire. They arrived.
Okay.
They have a higher level of training, so I turned the care over to them. Then when HVA arrived, they needed essentially fire to drive the rig while rendering aid to Mr. Smith. So I stayed with Mr. Smith and applied pressure to his pelvis the entire way possible.
Okay, so you got into the ambulance with them.
Correct.
Got it. So fair to say that your role on scene, Deputy Trask, was largely focused on the victim, and you didn't do any sort of canvassing, evidence processing, things of that nature. Correct. When you arrived on scene, was there anyone else other than Mr. Smith and the person on the phone that you observed in the vicinity?
There was no one,
So obviously there were no clear suspects or any clue as to what had happened.
correct. No, that's not that I heard.
Correct. Thank you. You rode with Mr. Smith to the hospital. What happened when you got to the hospital?
When we got to the hospital, they rendered aid. At some point, they determined that he was deceased.
And what hospital was this?
It was St. Joseph. I don't know if they changed the sections yet at that point.
Okay, but it was not University of Michigan.
Correct.
After you went to the hospital, did you return back to the scene, or was that it?
I returned to the scene to retrieve my patrol vehicle.
Okay.
My only patrol after that.
But you didn't again conduct any sort of follow-up, canvassing, anything like that.
Not at the scene then.
Thank you. I have no further questions for this witness.
Mr. Killawall, cross-examination.
Yeah, just a couple questions. Deputy Trask, you said that Mr. Trailsmith was unresponsive. So were any words spoken by him during this time with your aide?
No.
No words spoken. Okay, and one other question is, you said there was another person on the phone. Do you know who that person was?
I don't know who he was. I know other deputies spoke with him.
It was a man?
Yes.
You think it was a family? Do you know if it was a family member?
I do not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
No questions? All right, you may step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
You call your next witness.
People call Deputy Roberts with Sandra. Sub 4.
Sub 4.
Sir, please come forward to be sworn.
Deputy.
We got to see, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Have a seat. State your first and last name and spell it for the record, please.
Brandon Roberts, BRANDONROBERTS.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Honor. Sir, how are you currently employed?
Washington County Sheriff's Office, as a road patrol.
Road patrol deputy. Have you received any sort of additional training as it relates to your role as a road patrol deputy?
I have received training as an evidence technician.
Okay. And directing your attention to the date of June 28th of this year, were you dispatched to Nash in the city or in Ypsilanti Township?
I was
Okay. And what was the nature of that dispatch?
for a shooting.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you do when you arrived on scene?
On my arrival, I went to the backyard of the address. There were deputies on scene already, tending to a victim. At that point, I was advised to shut down Nash Avenue at the south end. Where I proceeded, blocked out the roadway until I was relieved by MSP to begin processing and collecting evidence.
Okay. And as a deputy being tasked with processing and collecting evidence, what does that entail? What are you looking for? What are you doing?
We're going through the scene, looking in the case of shooting, looking for shell casing, true current vehicle, identification, anything that I see there a suspect for.
Okay. And I guess what if anything did you locate?
Located multiple shell casing fragments, cell phones, or something.
So I'm going to direct your attention and spend some time with respect to shell casings. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Where I guess let's just start with describe where you found shell casings.
Located 3 different calibers of shell casings. Located a 9mm casings, 4 of them in total. East side of Nash, front of the address. Located 6 5.7 caliber shell casings. They were
Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry.
6 5.7 caliber shell casings. They were north of the address on the east side of Nash, and then 19 7.62 caliber shell casings north of the address on the west side of Nash.
Okay, so if I'm at the residence, if I'm standing on the front porch of the residence, there were, I guess the casings closest to me would have been the 9mm casings. Is that fair to say?
Close, I don't know exact distances. The 9mm
were directly across from that address.
Okay, and then moving slightly north are the 5.7 casings from the 9mm casings. I believe you said it was more.
Correct.
Okay, and then the 7.62 casings. Where were they in relation to the 5.7mm casings?
So the 5.7 were on the east side of Nash, directly across on the west side of Nash.
Okay.
Directly across.
And you said there were 4 9mm casings, 6 5.7mm casings, and 19 7.62mm casings.
Correct.
Okay. The 7.62mm casings. With your role as a deputy and evidence tech, are you familiar with what sort of 7.62mm casing could be associated with?
Yeah.
What sort of would that be?
Typically, it's a AK style.
In your experience, are there pistols or handguns that fire 7.62mm casing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And I believe the court, is aware, but a 9mm is a casing that you would frequently associate with. Is that fair to say?
Typically, yes.
Obviously, there are different large that fire that, but in your experience, it'd be fair to say that a 9mm is more associated with a handgun.
9mm is referred to as a.
Okay. And this 5.77mm round, is there anything noteworthy about that to you?
I'm not strongly familiar with the 5.7. From my knowledge, is that it is a gun round. There is some use in it, but it's not that I would use.
Okay. Deputy Roberts, would it be fair to say that there were kind of 3 distinct areas where these casings were found?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess the follow-up to that, you didn't see like commingling of casings?
No.
Okay. Were you able to make any sort of observations as far as where any bullets went?
Yes, we did locate bullets, what were suspected bullet strikes and bullet holes.
Okay, and where did you locate those?
We located what we suspected bullet strikes on we were looking at Nash, essentially be in the center of the house, just below the ground level, and some brick. There was one on the north side of the address, at the side door, outside door. And then there were multiple strikes on the garage as well. Another one went through 2 fences in the garage behind the address, and then there were also multiple suspected bullet strikes on the residence next door, just north of the address.
The court's already heard from Deputy Trask's testimony. He testified that the victim, Charles Smith, was found kind of in the backyard of his residence. Were you able to make any observations as far as where the victim was when he was allegedly struck by the bullets?
There was suspected that was collected within the northwest section of the residence in the backyard. So we've been around the driveway at that corner here before you come around to the backyard.
Okay. The location of that suspected and subsequent location of the victim, are you able to make any sort of statements as far as was the victim, do you believe the victim was moving at all when he was struck or anything like that?
It appeared so. There was up there, and then some additional suspects further into the backyard behind the house that was in line with.
Okay. Did you locate any casings in and around the front of the home, the Nash address?
No, not very well.
Okay. Do you recall, and did you look for any casings on the victim's person or around where the victim was found?
I did not, when I was was collecting evidence there, nothing was indicated, nothing was marked.
If in your experience, if another deputy in rendering aid to Mr. Smith had located something of evidentiary value, would they have communicated that to you as the person who's processing the scene?
They would have, or they would have collected it themselves.
Okay. And neither of those things happened.
Not that I'm aware of. No one told me about a firearm or any case of revolt.
And Deputy Roberts, it's fair to say, you were basically the main person on this scene who's responsible for processing the evidence associated with it.
I was.
They have one more.
You may.
No further questions for this witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Killawald, cross-examination.
Just a couple questions, Your Honor. Deputy, by the description of separate shell casing areas, would you say there was some distance between the shooters?
I guess depending on what you mean by some distance, they weren't standing right next to each other. Say that there was several feet between them. Yes.
Several feet? And in your estimate and your experience, would that indicate, since there's the 3 different types of shell casings, would that indicate to you that there may have been 3 separate shooters?
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying that the areas we were talking about, the different areas location of the casings, you're saying that's only a matter of feet between the different areas?
I mean, several feet. I don't know the exact. From where the 9mm to the 5.7 were, I would guess over, so you're probably over 10 feet. And then with 5.7 and the 7.62 were, they were across the street, which she was 20 feet.
All right, thank you very much. Oh, and one other thing, were any fingerprints taken on any of the casings or anything like that?
MSP won't take fingerprints off casings that discharge, just due to the violence of the firearm. This strikes that.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
What about DNA?
Same thing. They won't take them on any discharge cases because the evidence is essentially destroyed.
The DNA as well as the
Fingerprints.
Is it, you indicated, and I want to make sure I got this right, you found evidence of both strikes.
Correct.
Okay. You said there were some in the center of the house and there were some in the garage.
Yes.
All right. If you were standing on the street facing the house, is the garage to the right or the left?
The garage would be to the right.
And you said, would it be a fair statement to say that most of the strikes that you found were either in the center or in the garage?
They would.
Where, now this is the part I didn't really understand. Describe to me again where you found.
So the residence sits on the west side of Nash Avenue. The main door will be facing east side of the street. North end of the residence is the driveway. So on the northwest corner.
I'm bad with north and south. I'm facing the house, which was
Facing the house, it would be on the right hand side, back of the house.
Okay. And you found somewhere around that corner, is that correct? Yeah. Okay. How did you see it?
And enough that the pool, I don't have exact measurement wise.
You didn't find it in front of the house?
Not that I recall, nothing that way. I remember collecting from there.
And then you also found something in the backyard in the area where the individual was located, is that right?
Correct. What would be in line from the initial at the corner and then leading to the bottom.
In your experience as an evidence tech, when there are to the surface, like a garage door, is there a way to determine the direction or the angle at which they struck that object?
There is a possible way. It all depends on when you have an entry point, you have an exit point, you can create a line to it. With the number of strikes that we located, it was difficult to determine what was the entrance and then what would be the exit point for that round.
Well, you for example, there was a garage door was closed, right? Okay, and you saw holes in the garage door. Did anybody examine the inside of the garage to determine whether there were any additional strikes or any
Inside the garage, there were other indicators of holes and strikes. There were some fragments that were located inside
Did you say no holes or
There
straight?
were, and there were fragments located inside the garage.
Okay, well, that would have given you the 2 points to be able to determine the direction, correct?
If you have multiple holes on the outside and then a couple holes on the inside, it's not that easy to determine which one of those multiple holes may have created it because of hole tunnel.
Okay, so would it be a fair statement to say then that you made no effort to determine the direction that it's coming from?
I did, but I could not determine from the secondary point inside the garage which of the holes on the outside of the garage would have caused that initial strike.
What about the holes that you found in the center of the house itself?
To a degree, but yeah, it's the same thing is that when a bullet strikes, it's going to be a crater. More than likely, it would have been straight on, but at an angle, it would create an oblong shape.
Did you find any in the house itself?
No, I did not locate any penetration rounds that went into
But you did in the garage.
in the ground. I did.
Does your expertise extend to being able to identify or distinguish between different types of bullets?
I guess what do you mean?
Okay, well, you said you found more than one in the garage.
Full fragment.
Both fragments. Were the fragments intact enough for you to be able to identify?
That is beyond my training.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, yes, the bullet fragments themselves were beyond my training. So to determine-
They'd have been turned over to MSD ballistics.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to.
Yeah.
You indicated that when you searched the area or in the area where the individual was lying on the ground, you didn't see anything of any evidentiary value. Is that correct?
No, upon my initial contact, the deputies were attending aid. From there, I left to shut down the street. When I returned, it was again suspect that was found there. Cell phones.
No weapons, no shell casings, nothing of that nature.
Nothing that I located, nothing that was indicated to me from any other deputies.
We heard testimony from Deputy Trask that when he arrived on the scene, there was another individual with Mr. Smith who was on the telephone. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know whether that individual was searched to see if there was any evidentiary value on this person?
That I don't know. I was not.
You didn't do that,
I did not.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right.
No redirect, John.
No redirect. You may step down. Thank you, sir. Call your next witness.